In this demo, we're going to sum the expenses in a list. We went ahead and opened VS Code, and now we can create a new file called expenses.py. At the top of our file, let's create our list of expenses. We went out to lunch every day this week, and we want to sum all 7 lunch receipts from this week. So we're going to fill in the list with our lunch totals so we can see how much we spent. We have 10.50, 8, 5, 15, 20, 5, and 3. Then we'll also create a variable called sum set to 0. This is what we'll want to add each expense to as we loop over our list. Now we can create a for loop that loops over our list. We'll call our loop variable expense, but remember, we can name it whatever we want, so actually let's call it x for brevity. Then inside our loop, we want to set sum equal to sum plus x. That means each time we'll add x to our current sum and save it to the sum variable. So for each run of the loop, we're adding one of our expenses to sum. Finally, outside of the loop, let's print the sum with print sum in parentheses. If we run this, we can see 66.50 printed to the screen. We actually want to make this a little more clear by printing you spent before the sum. Now, before we had been concatenating values and strings we wanted to print with plus signs. But you can actually separate values with commas in a print statement. So we'll have the string you spent, comma, sum inside the print statement. This is nice because doing it this way, we don't have to convert sum to a string. And if we run this, we can see you spent 66.50 printed to the screen. So we can see that the comma added a space automatically for us. Let's also add a $sign and run again. Now we can see there's a space in front of our sum after the $sign, which we don't want. We can actually specify what we want to be the separator between our values by adding comma sep equals. Instead of a space, we want nothing. So let's put an empty string here. Now if we run this, we see you spent 66.50 with no space before the $sign. Let's also add space on lunch this week and run it again. That looks great. So now we've seen how to sum a list with a for loop. But the nice thing about Python is that it has a lot of built-in functions, and one of those is sum for lists. So we could actually skip the for loop and just call the sum function and put the expenses list inside of parentheses. When we type sum parentheses, the tooltip shows us that the sum function takes an iterable, which is also what a list is. We'll put in the name of our expenses list here. Now let's assign this to a variable named total. We then need to replace sum with total in the print statement. And finally, if we run this again, we get the same thing. But don't worry, learning the longer for loop way of doing a sum will certainly be useful for future problems.